The sights and sounds of southern India present a vastly different world from the green fens of eastern England, where Joe Homan was born. Joe is a man of vision, whose life's work has been to help others in need. Joe Homan's ambition was to change the semi-desert into an oasis. Joe wanted destitute boys to have the chance to become worthwhile citizens. The children of boys' towns enjoy their morning dip. They deserve it. They have already worked for an hour in the fields before eating breakfast. Soon it'll be time to go to school, but for the moment they are having a good time in an unusual swimming pool. It is an enormous well, and like most other things at Boys Town, the children made it themselves, digging and blasting out earth and rocks to find water just where the water diviner predicted it would be, at a depth of 11 meters. Each boys' town has about 80 boys. They are housed in bungalows with about 12 boys of mixed ages in each. Older boys helping to look after the younger ones. They live in clean and simple conditions, without complicated fittings or furniture. After training, when they return to their own villages, they still accept the lifestyle of the rural community. As the school children go to their lessons, the swimming pool turns back into a well, and a farm boy starts up the pump to water the crops, so essential to promote growth under the withering heat of the tropical sun. Because of the irrigation, Joe is able to achieve 2 crops per year. The first is rice, which grows well thanks to the supply of water that transforms the semi-desert into fertile land. The boys are very much part of the local community. They go to the nearby school, and as they set out in the morning, they pass the little shrine built around a tree trunk, where a snake has made his home. At some towns, they walk several miles to the village school and accept it as part of their daily routine. The younger children use slates at school, cheap and practical. But the older boys have books and pens supplied by Boys Town. At 15, they choose either further education or a 3-year farming course. Rajendra is an accomplished farmer. He has an ideal relationship with the youngsters under his care. After all, he had to face their problems himself not many years ago, for he was one of the first boys to be brought up in Boys Town. Banana plants grow up to 3 or 4 inches a day. In the 10th month, a beautiful flower bud emerges to reveal a hand of tiny bananas. Joe is a qualified and a natural teacher, and the children listen to him with rapt attention. Boys are never allowed to lose touch with their villages. 3 times a year they return to stay with relatives, or if they are orphans, with a family arranged through the village headman. They must remain accepted, not become outsiders. As modernization has increased, several old boys have been helped with loans and now own tractors, which they use for contract hire. When Manikam left Boys Town, he settled back in his village with his buffalo and began farming using the good methods he had learned. Although he is only a young man, local farmers often follow his example and ask his advice as they sit over a game of carom. Traditional village trades, such as grinding peanuts for oil and butter, are familiar to the boys. But even these scenes are rapidly disappearing as India moves forward with modern technology. Boys' towns grow enough rice to feed themselves and sell the surplus to fund the whole cultivation. It is possible to grow 2 good crops because of the irrigation, and the second is usually of millet or cotton. The harvesting and threshing is done in the traditional manner by the boys themselves. They work hard without being pressed, grateful for the chance of a better life, now and in the future. The age-old methods ensure that everyone is occupied and in fact needed to bring in the harvest. The sacks weigh heavy, but represent a job well done and the security of food in the year ahead. The Tamils in the south of India have a heritage and culture all of their own, which is reflected in their architecture. Religion is sincere. Hindu, Muslim, Christian, and any other sect all mingle happily together. Pongal is the equivalent of harvest festival or Thanksgiving, when the oxen are decorated to thank them for their labor during the past year. The villagers also come with their offerings to the nearby shrine. The special sweet Pongal rice is dedicated at a ceremony in which all take part. Well building is an ongoing project, digging ever deeper to ensure a reliable supply of water during the dry season. Every boys' town has at least one well, each of swimming pool size, often going down 20 meters into solid rock. All the excavating is done by hand. The only other help is from explosive, and that not only makes the work easier, it certainly makes life much more interesting. The fuse is lit and slid down a string, and then everyone waits expectantly for the explosion to occur. After the blast, there is more work with sledgehammers, breaking up the bigger pieces of rock. But nothing is wasted in boys' towns, for the stone is then used for building. The dairy scheme is one of the most popular. When Joe wanted to add buffalo to the arable farming at the end of the 60s, the problem was how to afford the first animals. Just at that time, Heinz shipped a consignment of baked beans to India for distribution to deserving causes. An official seeing Boys Town on the list sent a large quantity, which were gratefully received. But at that time, there were only a few boys in the project. Joe sold the surplus beans, and with the proceeds, he bought 3 buffaloes. Heinz 58, 59, and 60. And so then, it was expansion into milk. One reason for keeping buffaloes is that they give a good yield of very rich, Jersey-like milk. Perhaps the most important of all in the semi-desert, buffaloes are excellent scavengers, and they are easy for the youngsters to handle. When the first calf is born, the placenta is wrapped and put in a tree to ward off evil spirits. similar to the cantristes placed in the fields to protect the crops. Like people of all countries, they have their lucky charms. The boys tending the buffaloes are responsible for everything. Milking is at 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. The early morning milk making the most money. If a boy shows interest and an aptitude with animals, he is given 2 buffalo calves to rear during his training. The religious festival of Pongal takes place over 2 days in January, and there is always a competition for the best decorated ox. The boys from the various towns take great pride and care in preparing the animals for this occasion. Nothing is wasted at boys' towns. Each morning, boys bring buckets of buffalo dung to fill up the gas plant. During the day, the heat breaks it down, and the methane it provides is used for cooking in the bungalows. Joe always leads by example and tackles any job, blocked pipes and all. After the methane gas has been used, the residual manure, remaining as a slurry, is a better than normal fertilizer for the land. Each boys' town is green and productive, fashioned over a few years from scrubland and varying in size from 9 to 35 acres. Southern India has a very high rainfall during the monsoon season. The problem is that much of it goes to waste before it can be used. Joe is solving this problem. Large ponds are dug out to capture the surface rainwater to supplement the well irrigation. These are used for fish farming and sometimes stocked with carp supplied by the Indian government. Besides the wells and the ponds, each of the towns has a supply of fresh drinking water from its individual borehole, sunk at least 60 feet below the surface. The boys take turns at preparing and cooking their meals, with rice and vegetable curries being the staple diet. Meat is only taken 2 or 3 times a year.
தினம் அர்த்தமில்லாமல் கர்த்தரில்லாமல் வாழ்கின்றார்கள்.
Since the earliest days, the boys' towns have cooperated with the Indian government agricultural departments, which have been very helpful. Experimental seeds and new crops are grown on demonstration plots, and Joe discusses with government advisors any problems that may arise. If the crop yields well, local farmers will be eager to grow it themselves, and the whole area will benefit. The old way of ploughing takes about 3 weeks to prepare an acre of ground for sowing, going backwards and forwards laboriously over the land. The boys plough only with oxen, so that they train with equipment that is used in their own villages. Coconuts are a long-term crop. Trees take 7 years to produce fruit commercially, and then continue to yield for a further 60 years. They grow up to 30 feet tall, and the crop is harvested once every 2 months, to the great enjoyment of the boys. As the festival of Pongal continues, the animals are given the first helping of Pongal rice to thank them for their labours of the year. It was the government who first suggested that it would be a good thing to rear silkworms. The 3-week cycle of growth from egg to cocoon is fascinating. The eggs arrive from the government station, and a good sheet has about 20,000 eggs on it. Joe normally buys about 100,000 eggs a month. Acres of mulberry bushes are grown and leaves picked every day for feeding 6 times throughout every 24 hours. The silkworms seem to be growing as you watch them, and you can hear